Good afternoon. Welcome to Year 7 of European Entrepreneurship and Innovation Thought Leaders here at the Stanford School of Engineering. My name is Burton Lee, and I'm pleased to present our first session of 2015 Startups under War and Censorship in Ukraine and Russia. This is a relatively unusual look at startups that we'll take here in this course with a bit more focus on political, social, economic context than you'll find in other courses on startups here at Stanford and in the engineering school. But this is not a policy course. And we bring in real entrepreneurs, real founders, investors to talk about what's happening on the ground with building companies and investing in companies in their particular regions. Today our focus is on Ukraine and on Russia. Obviously it's gotten a lot of attention over the past 16 plus months about what's going on there. We're going to talk about how the broader conflict in the region has affected the startup and investing environment in Ukraine and Russia today. Our speakers today are Anna Degtereva, CEO and founder of Happy Farm Accelerator based in Kiev, who has flown in from Kiev for purposes of speaking today here at Stanford. Thank you, Anna, for coming all this. It's a very long way. Vlad Voskresensky, CEO of InvisibleCRM, who's also flown in from Kiev. Anna Dvornikova, who is managing partner at Tech Ventures, also heads Ambar, and is the co-chair of the SVOD, very famous, well-known SVOD conference here in Silicon Valley each year. Max Skibinsky, CEO of a stealth Bitcoin startup whose name we cannot repeat or mention, except in hurried whispers off to the side. Recently venture partnered Andreessen Horowitz, based here in the Valley. And then Vitaly Golomb, also based here in the Valley, CEO and founder of Keen Systems, which operates both in Kiev and here in the Bay Area. So thank you all for coming. Unfortunately, our sixth speaker, Igor Shoifot, was unable to make it because of a last-minute schedule conflict. I'd also like to thank our returning partner, Enterprise Estonia Silicon Valley this year, Andres Virg. Where are you? Where's Andres? There's Andres Virg. And our new partner, Junior Achievement Bulgaria out of Sofia, which is a very interesting entrepreneurship organization focused on junior high school and high school level entrepreneurship in Bulgaria and Southeastern Europe. First, a little context, a little review. Last year, when we were doing year 6, it was coincidental that this course was running each week during the time of the unrest and rebellion and revolt in Maidan Square and across Kiev, across Ukraine. And so this began in early December. We followed it week by week. It got extremely ugly. People died. Many people died. And so this is some of the context that our entrepreneurs today here from Ukraine operate in today. And this has also affected startups in Russia as well in terms of the broader political environment that Russia is moving to. Our first speaker is going to be Anna Degtereva, CEO and founder of Happy Farm Accelerator in Kiev. Anna, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everybody. Burton, thank you so much for this amazing opportunity to introduce my lovely Ukraine. I'm very happy to be here at Stanford among VCs, entrepreneurs, future leaders, and of course, Happy New Year to all of you. I am Anna Degtereva, CEO and founder of Happy Farm Business Accelerator. I am a super mom and super business mom. I have a wonderful daughter who is 7 and 42 startup teams who are my crazy kids. I started my first company in 2006, the Global Management Challenge in Ukraine. The Global Management Challenge is the Global Management Challenge, the largest strategy and management competition in the world. Every year, 500,000 people from 42 countries participate in this competition, and Ukraine won twice. Following the success of Global Management Challenge, I thought it will be very good to organize something special for our inventors and young entrepreneurs. In 2009, I organized a new competition called Innovation Breakthrough, and we are looking for great innovation ideas from IT, biotech, and energy conservation. The prize, a one-week trip to Silicon Valley, but it's not enough for development connection and for change mentality. And yes, this is great awards, for example, for one team, but it's not enough for all Ukraine. So in 2012, I launched the Happy Farm Business Accelerator. And in 2013, in December, Vitaly, Golomb, and I organized a big conference, Startup Adventure Summit, for our Ukrainian entrepreneurs. And finally, last September, Ukraine Tech Gen conference in San Francisco. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous because this is my first time at Stanford. Yeah, I'm like a student, not like entrepreneur. Okay. If we compare two ecosystems, the US and UA, we can see interesting things. In the US, we have ideal situation with universities, accelerators, angel investors, VC funds, and government support. What ingredients do we have in our Ukrainian kitchen? Yes, a lot of talented students at universities, just 3 or 4 accelerators, maybe 20 brave angel investors, just 12 venture funds, and absolutely no government support. So what do we do as Happy Farm and how we develop our Ukrainian ecosystem? We have an amazing place, great campus, and a lot of talented mentors. We work with international startup teams from Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Spain, Italy, and China. And they work in Kiev, and then 1 month in the US. We invested $2.2 million in 42 startup teams, and 20 of them raised money. Okay, I believe that an ecosystem needs great events. It helps develop teams, raise money, involve new mentors and investors. That's why we organized Startup Adventure Summit at Kiev. It was at the beginning our revolution. It was very dangerous and risky. A lot of our speakers nervous, but thanks God, all our partners, mentors, sponsors, speakers join us in Kiev, and Adele Racy, Dave McClure, and so many more partners and speakers share their knowledge, energy, enthusiasm with our young participants. And first question was, Anna, when we can visit in Maidan? And yeah, you know, we have fighting in Ukraine, and that can stop us. We need to continue to establish new links and to showcase our talent. Last September, we organized our first conference in San Francisco, Ukraine Tech Jam. Ukraine Tech Jam. And as a result, we have new contracts, new contacts, and our teams raised new investments. We have a lot of plans for this year, and I hope everything will be good in our country. Thank you so much.
Vlad.
Yes. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Vlad Voskresensky. I'm CEO of a company called InvisibleCRM. Live 2 lives, literally. So I spent half of my life back in Kiev in Ukraine, and then the other half of my life primarily here in the Bay Area, but then traveling all around the world where our customers are. So my background is technical. My first education was computer science. I'm a master of computer science. The second was master in international relationship. Prior InvisibleCRM. InvisibleCRM is kind of a unique company for Ukraine. We're going to talk a bit about this company. What's unique about Invisible is that we are a product company, which is not typical for today's Ukraine IT ecosystem. Because primarily Ukraine is service infrastructure. Like 95% of IT businesses in Ukraine are doing services. And prior InvisibleCRM, my previous company, we were also doing services. Started in 2002, grew up to like 60, 70, 80 people, and then we sold our company to a New York Stock Exchange listed company and started our product business. So because of that, like I was always connected to Ukraine. I was born in Ukraine. I got my degree in Ukraine, and then I started to do business in Ukraine, and then I went abroad. I know the historical development of that ecosystem in Ukraine and where we are right now. We're going to talk about the influence of current situation on not necessarily IT ecosystem, but more on kind of psychology approach of people to life, I would say. But it definitely influenced the understanding of those IT guys which are living in Ukraine and doing business in Ukraine. So a couple of words about our current company. What's InvisibleCRM is doing, why we actually even exist in this world, right? The roots of InvisibleCRM are in service business. At some point, we get kind of bored, and we didn't want to continue to do service business. We wanted to kind of generate more added value. So decided to create a product company which would do the services, not services, but products, and then services maybe on top of those products, which are actually connecting two worlds. The worlds of personal usage of computers and the worlds of enterprise usage of computers. Came up with different products, came up with different technologies, ended up with doing OEM kind of business with large vendors. So those guys, I mean, more logos like that, but these are the biggest. They are buying technology from us, embedding that technology in their products, and then sell this within their price lists. So we are literally a technology provider, keep inventing and developing new technologies. All R&D is in Kiev. Still though, we have business development all in the United States. We do not have any business in Ukraine per se. We do not sell our technology to anyone in Ukraine. We have a couple of customers in Ukraine, but it's kind of a funny story. They've got products from those vendors. They just physically located in Ukraine, but they buy from those guys, and essentially that's the technology which is developed across the street from them. That's why actually economical influence on our company and everything which is going on right now in the country is like very, very indirect, because our business is still outside of the country, though we live there, so we can talk about that. And then Invisible was very good, and at some point it was considered like the most successful product company for Ukraine, which I personally claim it's a shame, because Invisible is still a small company, and I think such country like Ukraine deserves much bigger companies, much more successful companies. But we've got our 5 minutes of glory, and then our software was demoed by Bill Gates, by Larry Ellison from big stages, etc. So we've got some visibility, we've got some success. Keep doing this. All our R&D is still in Kiev, and we do not plan to relocate anywhere, though there were some thoughts about that. And we are a company which is VC-backed. We do have two VCs which invested in us. One VC is American VC, the other VC is Scandinavian VC. So when all those things started on Maidan, and especially with the war, Maidan was not really a frightening event. It was like protests, and nothing really happened to the business and ecosystem, etc., etc. But when the war started, when Russia invaded, we did definitely discuss those things. Well, first of all, with all of our partners and customers, because they were concerned, can we keep doing things and develop and deliver? So we did a lot of stuff in the company to secure us in case that would reach out Kiev, where our office is. Since we've secured that and then kept doing services, kept delivering on promise, that was kind of relaxed. But still on board, we were discussing potential relocation of our office to somewhere, either to European Union or United States. Thanks God it was only plans, so nothing. We did really nothing to relocate, and we still all R&D is in Kiev, and we keep doing things in Ukraine, in Kiev. A couple of comments about Ukraine and Russian flavor in InvisibleCRM, because Invisible was not the company which was funded only by Ukrainians. Funny enough, there was a company which is funded by both Ukrainians and Russians, and at the beginning we even had offices in Moscow and in Kiev, kind of equal, like 7 people there and there. And then naturally, Moscow office was like shrinking, and Kiev office was growing, primarily because of the difference in salaries. We would open position in both offices, and then Kiev would hire, Moscow would not, and then Moscow office just died. So right now we have R&D only in Kiev. Still, though, one of the board directors is Russian guy, and then we one of the some guys from the VC funds who invested in us are also Russians, and they do have influence on the company, etc. So it was an interesting time when we started to talk the different angle, I would say, about things on board meetings, etc., etc. But again, thanks God, I have very smart investors and very smart board members, which are smart enough to stay independent on all those things and just don't do business, but don't discuss those things. Why Ukraine for us? Well, historically, because I'm Ukrainian and we started in Ukraine. But that's just for us, right? Then I think the huge value for everyone, and I think Ukraine is yet kind of uncovered diamond. There is a lot of great talent in this country, and in that country. And then those guys are yet to be on the next level, which is, for me, is doing product business and doing successfully. So a lot of huge amount of people which have great technical talent, easy to hire them, cheaper than definitely here, cheaper than in Russia, maybe more expensive than in India these days already. But still, it's a great source of technical ability. What Ukraine definitely lacks is, because it's primarily service country, it's software outsourcing. What Ukraine clearly lacks is an amount of people which has very good product mindset. So the unique combination for today is when people with a product mindset are actually utilizing Ukrainian technical mindset and then develop some startups. So I know many companies which are following that path, and Invisible kind of did the same, though we didn't think about this in front. We just started to do the business, and that's it. But then we were able to hire best resources, et cetera, because people are getting tired during doing services. They would like to do products. And this is what I think is still the strength of Ukraine, which is yet to be fully uncovered and realized by the other parts of the world. In Ukraine, it was hard to raise money. We've tried. In Ukraine, it was kind of absolutely impossible back in 2006-07 when we did that. So we did raise not in Ukraine, outside of Ukraine. And today, as Anya mentioned, it's still not yet even an ecosystem. There are kind of a handful of people which are investing. So especially in this economy in Ukraine, Ukrainians cannot invest because their business is not in a very good situation. And foreigners are afraid to invest because even though situation is promising, it's still not predictable. And even though there are many promises and many good signs which are started to change in the country, again, there are no predictability yet, which for VC business means red flag immediately, right? So it's kind of hard to raise money in Ukraine right now, which I think plays well for those entrepreneurs which are in the country, because Ukraine was never self-sufficient market, and today it's even more not self-sufficient market. So the only business you can do, the only place where you can sell when you do software in Ukraine is somewhere outside of Ukraine. So that global vision of Ukrainian entrepreneurs and those guys who are building startups, it actually helps that country back, because pretty much everywhere are talking good English. They know how to sell outside of the country. They do not think locally, they think globally, which sometimes doesn't work, but often it actually oops, sorry, that's Oriana. That actually brings good results. So that's kind of short summary. The rest we'll probably discuss during the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Vlad, I saw in one of your slides that you were elected to Parliament in 2012.
You commented that we are not talking politics here, but that's a bit of a political flavor on me. It was very unexpected to me, and again, this is maybe it's a good representation of current Ukraine situation. Things are changing really rapidly right after Maidan, etc., etc. My story is the following, because I was always passionate about the country, and I was talking a lot about what needs to be changed in the country so IT business is in better shape, etc., etc. When a new president was elected, a new election to parliament was appointed, one of the party kind of called me and proposed to include myself into the list of the party, because partially our parliament is elected based on the party lists. And I said, look, I'm not going to change my life and be a politician, but I know you guys and I trust your values, first of all, so I'm going to help you. And I'm not against if you would include me in a list. I would kind of promote you and talk about your party and really support you. And then unexpectedly for all of us, we've got such a good results at the elections, so my seat is qualified. And I'm right now at my maybe lifetime dilemma. What shall I do?
So today you are still a current member of Parliament.
I am elected, but I did not step in. I didn't have literally signed all the papers, etc., because according to Ukrainian law, I need to stop doing business. I need to step out of all of the things which can be money generating and do only politics. And literally, I'm the first in the history of Ukraine who was elected to Parliament but did not step in. And I have that time. It's hard. So I have time till end of May to decide what I'm going to do. Am I going to step out of business and do a political career or stay in the business? And right now, I'm inclining to stay in the business because I think that personally I can give more to my country doing business, creating jobs and everything, rather than go into politics. Because I think I can still influence political situation, knowing so many people right now in the cabinet of ministry, in the parliament, including in president's administration office. So this is it. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll get to more of that in the Q&A. So Anna Dvornikova, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Anna. I am Russian. I'm from Russia, but I've been living in the Silicon Valley for over 15 years, so my home is here. I'm the managing partner of Tech Ventures, which is a seed fund investing in local and international startups that come to the Silicon Valley to build companies on a global scale. And Tech Ventures was born out of many years of work with international community of entrepreneurs and investors, especially with Russian and Ukrainian entrepreneurs. So a couple of words about myself. I am the president and the board member of the famous AMBAR. It's a world largest business network of Eastern European and Eurasian professionals with over 50,000 members. And I want to reiterate here that we are a non-political organization. We are a group of Russians and Ukrainians working together and building companies and changing the world for the better. And we don't have any conflicts like Russia and Ukraine have right now in a political arena. Also, I am the founder of the yearly Silicon Valley Open Doors Investment Conference, which takes place, and I actually would like to invite all of you to join us in June 10th and 11th at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View. The focus of the conference is to put together local entrepreneurship and investment community with the international entrepreneurship and investment community. We've been in business for over 10 years. This will be our 11th year. And Vlad was his first actually speech internationally was at SVOD back in 2006, I think, 2007, yes. And also last year, I got an award from a prestigious award of Women of Influence from Silicon Valley Business Journal in the category of women venture capitalists. Now, I have to admit, it's very hard for me to speak about Russia and Ukraine in separate terms when I talk about business and high tech. So if I would give this talk, say, a little bit over a year ago, I would say Russia/Ukraine or Ukraine/Russia. So I would not, it would be equal because the communities were so interconnected and investors were going back and forth and you never knew where the companies were. They had offices in Russia, they had offices in Ukraine. So when I would discuss this region, I would position it as just kind of one region. So now, as we all know, things have changed. And so let me separate talking first about Russia and then about Ukraine. Because of all our activities here in the Silicon Valley, our team was sort of one of the major initiators of development of high-tech industry in Russia and Ukraine. And we pushed for that very hard, and we were happy to see the results. And because of that, working with the communities here and there and with the governments, we had some leverage so that back in 2010, we put together a delegation of 20 top venture capital funds from the Silicon Valley to visit Russia. And the idea was to meet with the president, with the government, with the business elite, and obviously with entrepreneurs and investment communities. Then we invited the president to come over to the Silicon Valley, and we kind of hosted him here. Then it was President Medvedev. And our sole goal was to persuade the president and the government that oil-based economy is not sustainable on the long run, and that Russia should use the momentum to put this money flowing out of oil into high tech and kind of make it painlessly. And it seemed that we succeeded in this effort because just in 1 year, the trip has brought over $400 million in deals. But then the oil prices went up, and the rest is history. Russia made a completely different choice. It decided to go with a kind of easy path, and here is where it is right now. I don't really want to talk about negative stuff because you all read the news and you know what's happening. Also, I'm always trying to stay optimistic because crises come and go, and wars come and go over the time. So, in the end of the day, I do believe that the quicker Russian economy collapses, the quicker the regime changes, the quicker the Russia will bounce back, and people will realize that they have to make these hard choices and hard decisions, and start building, if they want to succeed, start building an economy based on high tech. So this is my comment about Russia. We can talk more about that. Now I would like to say a few words about Ukraine. So when I'm thinking about Ukraine, I cannot but start comparing it with, out of all countries, Israel. Israel back in 70s and 80s. Let's just picture this. The country is in a continuous war. It was an agricultural state. Inflation was about 500%, whereas right now in Ukraine it's what, 80%? So salaries were paid almost on a daily basis. Government corruption was flourishing, and there was no oil. No oil to feed the economy. My very good friend and long-term business partner, Stas, who is actually present here, he told me an anecdote which I'm going to share with you. It took Moses 40 years to find the proper land for the Israelis to live. And do you know why? He was looking for this piece of land on the Near East that would not have oil. What a smart decision, right? Anyway, so look at Israel now, right? It's one of the greatest successes. Only in 2014, in the year of the longest war in Israel, it had $15 billion in exits, in company exits. So what's happening in Ukraine now? In Ukraine now, we have sort of exactly the same situation. It's mostly agricultural, government corruption, war, and I don't think the war will end anytime soon. It might be on and off, but in the end of the day, it will be going on, and the population should kind of adjust to that. And I think that Ukraine right now has kind of the same option as Israel had 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that either it will die as a nation, or it has to make big changes and start pushing and moving into the direction of the development of high tech. And in fact, I don't know, maybe, you didn't mention that actually, I hoped you would, that Ukraine right now is already making $2 billion in outsourcing. So it has all the momentum and all the right kind of base to move into this direction. And the only thing that's needed here is the will of the people and the will of the government. So how can we help? Based on our previous experiences, we believe that we believe in a triangle of 3 countries participating: United States, Israel, and Ukraine. So US has the best venture capital, strategy, leadership skills. It can open world markets, and obviously, provide companies with money. Israel has great, terrific entrepreneurs, day-to-day management, day-to-day influence, access to best technologies, and best education on the other side of the ocean. So what we came up with is a program which is pretty complicated. I'm not going to talk about it right now, and if anyone is interested, I will be happy to discuss it offline. So just to touch base. One, we've started monthly workshops in Kiev, and we already had two, going to have one on January 20th. We invite all of you, if you happen to be in Kiev. There will be founder of the company called Outbrain, a very hot company in Israel. Kind of to start this grassroots effort of interacting between Israelis and Ukrainians. Second thing, we're in discussions with the US government to start the US-funded seed accelerator for Ukrainian-Israeli startups. And the third effort, which is, I think, very important, and we should jointly participate in that, is PR and marketing of Ukrainian successful companies, successful businesses. Say, not so many people know that this famous company, Get Taxi, actually started in Ukraine. Everybody thinks it started in Israel. And there are plenty of stories like this. So to end up this short introduction, I just want to say that in general, I'm very optimistic on what's going to happen in both of these countries. They will choose separate ways, but still, you know, in the end of the day, I'm sure everything will be fine. And I do believe that if you are risk takers, then this is the time to start participating or, you know, in the activities, actually both in Russia and in Ukraine. And in my life, I follow this saying by Goethe, and I'm going to share it with you, that whatever you do or dream, you can just begin it and start doing it right now, because boldness has genius and power and magic in it. Good luck.
Thank you, Anna. Very inspiring talk and vision. Actually, the ties between Israel and the European startup scene are becoming quite broad. There's a lot of activity. A lot of Israeli entrepreneurs are now also flying into Berlin. So Berlin is becoming a real hub for Israeli startups and entrepreneurs. Max Skibinsky, thank you for coming. Please tell us what your thoughts are.
Hello, guys. So my name is Max Skibinsky, and I have been an entrepreneur here in Silicon Valley for close to 20 years. Done a number of startups, sold some startups, did angel investment. Right now, I'm running my third stealth startup in Bitcoin. So if you're interested in cryptography or you're interested in software stacks that are going to run e-commerce of the planet over the next 10 years, come chat with me after the event. We just raised multi-million round. So since 2013, I have been an investment partner in one of the largest mega funds on Sand Hill, Andreessen Horowitz. So let's, what I'm going to present to you today is sort of my look at Russia and Ukraine from venture capital perspective, how we would look at the ecosystem as investment opportunities. So first of all, Russia. So first thing to understand about Russia today, it's fundamentally a failed country. And if you look at the country as a software stack, so on the top level, you have system of governments, you have criminal justice system, you have economic sources. In Russia, pretty much every layer of the software stack today is broken. And Russia should have fixed Russia should have been fixing these issues since the fall of Soviet Union. And to a degree, what Anna was talking earlier about Medvedev administration, they did half-hearted try to actually fix this, but the end of the story, they did not. Nothing got fixed. In Russia today, in a situation that it masks solution to the systemic problems by basically two means. First is this overwhelming militarized campaign, which is part actual military invasion and part ideological. And second is complete blanket countrywide propaganda their campaign, and campaigns are fundamentally lies. So effectively, when you read the news and thinking, like, what the hell Russia is doing, I don't understand at all what it's doing, keep in mind they're not reacting to reality you see, they're not reacting to reality you know. It has its own kind of wrapped world reality, and people right now live in this reality. So analogy is it's effectively kind of like a drug addict neighbor, and this drug addict neighbor can actually be aggressive, it can kind of invade you, and it doesn't feel pain that much, so you can slap it with sanctions, and it's like, well, I'm on drugs, I'm not feeling anything. If I get nosebleed 6 months later, I don't understand connection between those two events. So in a situation basically not going to get good for a while, so my personal prediction is we're looking for 3 to 5 years of kind of this story playing itself out. And kind of at the end of the story, yes, sooner or later money runs out. You cannot be on drugs all your life. You will have to face real reality at some point. And the main problem for entrepreneurship is kind of those of you who are doing startups, you understand entrepreneurship is basically art of understanding reality. It's art of understanding reality better than incumbent companies, better than your competitors. Entrepreneurship is art of being maximally true to the world outside. And now you have the whole country that basically lives on lies, that people not only not getting habits how to understand and analyze reality, is the opposite. They're getting daily dose of misinformation and misdirection, how to hide reality from them. So obviously, I don't think anything super exciting in sense of entrepreneurship will be coming out of Russia until some sort of phase shift event. It probably will be like slow decay until some sort of restoration. That's probably a best case scenario, but it may take 10 years. The more risky way is some sort of revolution, but that revolution not necessarily will be progressive one. So don't think that like things cannot get worse. Oh no, they can. For example, current Russian system, current economic system is fundamentally not sustainable today with current political system. But if Russia after revolution degrades to something North Korea, so you basically have large population in concentration camps, there is hungers, people dying from hunger, but there is super strong enforcement mechanism, no, it totally can work. It can work for 30 years. So you basically don't know what's going to happen. One thing for sure, nothing good going to happen for entrepreneurs. So moving on to Ukraine. So Ukraine definitely got a lot of massive positive momentum from recent event. So nothing concentrates people's attention as good as military invasion. So to a degree, there is some good coming out of this whole situation. Problem is Ukraine fundamentally is former satellite state of Soviet Union, and it inherited lots of the same problems. And this problem still remains to be solved. The only difference is there are much more practical ways of starting to solve this problem. So, for example, Ukraine, for good or worse, it has functional democracy like Russia do not have. So it has very energetic class. It doesn't have oil. So there is lots of good things that kind of can happen in Ukraine. In sense of specific advice, one interesting use case I would recommend for Ukrainian entrepreneurial class is look at the examples of Brazil and India. Because today what I'm seeing on deal flow, I was exposed to that Ukrainian companies, they think, okay, we got our revolution, we're now Western leaning, everything is great, okay, give me Silicon Valley venture capital funding, we're awesome. And the answer is, well, you're not. Because to compete on Silicon Valley level, and again, it's same software stack. You need to be absolutely best in sense of raw talent. You need to be absolutely best in sense of potential of scaling your business after you got your initial success. There is, again, multiple layers, and some of these layers are present, like very good entry-level talent. Some of these layers are basically completely absent, and we recognize that things. That's just reality. So once you start competing with kind of top-notch Silicon Valley companies, that basically a fight that is becomes very hard to win in zero-sum competition. However, if you look at the outside world, especially if you look at ecosystem in Brazil and India, they are much more similar to what Ukraine is dealing with right now, because it's developing world. Their populations is much less affluent than populations here. These people with the startups they build there, they solve their local problems. So the example of the startup Burton mentioned earlier, that they completely bootstrapped, they had no venture funding, they just seen the problem, they solved it, and they created their own company. This would be much more similar to a success path that we're going to see in companies in Ukraine. And that will be exactly that shift of going from service-based economy, from startups that just provide outsourcing, to getting learning from this outsourcing and creating some sort of local products. So the good part about what I see the biggest potential in sense of Ukrainian entrepreneurship, roughly separate startups into two broad categories. One is startups for sated rich economies, and other startups for hungry developing economies. So what's the example of sated economy startup? Let's say Snapchat. It's basically a burning problem. Hey, I need my bra-less picture of girlfriend disappear in 5 seconds. It's not exactly the startup idea that would be like I would say, demanded in Ukraine today. But some other problems that we cannot come up here, they will be actually much more relevant. So when the entrepreneurs operate in developed world, they basically come up with ideas that is interesting for rich, affluent audiences. The ideas Ukrainian startup can come up with will be interested for audiences in developing economies. And the nice part is that's 90% of the world population, because basically rich developed world is a pretty tiny fraction of world population. So by solving their own local problems, by showing some sort of ingenuity in solving problems today on the ground in Ukraine, exactly, right after the war, basically almost in the middle of war zone, at the same time, you're solving lots of problems that will be the same for people in Brazil, in India, to a lesser degree in China. And that's a huge opportunity for Ukrainian startups. So that's all I have for you today. So thank you, guys. Thank you.
And our last speaker before we go to the panel is Vitaly Golomb, recently returned from Taiwan, I believe. Yes?
Yes. All right. So we'll try to make this a little more interactive, hopefully, maybe a little question and answer. I do a couple of different things, and I hope you enjoy my slides. So first of all, quick commercial about what my two companies do. One is a company called Keen, and the latest thing we released is a print marketplace. So think of it as Airbnb for print. You can basically go in, do a search, get live pricing for anything you need printed, from business cards to posters to T-shirts, etc. And we started in Bay Area. Most of our team is actually in Kiev, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. The other is a new entrepreneurship education and venture fund organization that focuses on Central Eastern Europe and Middle East. And what we are seeing there is that there's a lot of diamonds in the rough. We're looking far beyond just Ukraine or just CIS countries, because that's essentially kind of a selfish effort, because we think looking across 30 different countries, we'll find 30, 40 startups per year that have a chance of going global in the region. Part of what we do, and Anna and I started this back in December, as you saw, in Kiev. Basically, I do a lot of traveling. Last year, I was in 23 countries, spoke at a couple of dozen conferences. All of this, you can say, got started with Geeks on a Plane, with 500 startups a few years ago. And the idea there is to actually get a bunch of VCs and entrepreneurs that are well established to go and learn about new ecosystems around the world. But what I noticed is that when we went and visited these ecosystems, the entrepreneurs there are hungry for the knowledge that we brought with us from Silicon Valley and other more developed regions. So the original idea was to actually do kind of a mentors on a plane trip around several countries at the same time. I partnered with Anna in this effort, and we actually ended up doing such a large-scale conference in Kiev that we didn't really have the bandwidth to make it a tour that time around. So this time around, we're actually going ahead and doing that. And this year, we're going to be doing two tours. In February, we're doing in 10 days, we're doing 5 countries. So Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Dubai, Cairo, Egypt, and we're partnering with Startup Turkey in Antalya. So that's the first round. And the second round will be Eastern Europe, so Romania, Croatia, Hungary, Poland, and then doing a bigger event in Kiev as kind of to round it out. And what we're doing there is bringing some great speakers that are very experienced, both in, out of London and experienced in more developed parts of Europe, as well as Silicon Valley, and bring that knowledge to both entrepreneurs in those areas that are hungry and developing and are hungry for this type of knowledge and mentorship, as well as would-be investors that are going to make up the angel class locally. And for venture fund to actually find diamonds in these areas, there needs to be, for every diamond that comes out and actually becomes a company with some kind of a product market fit, initial customers, and initial product that sells, there needs to be 100 funded companies with amounts that are, depending on where, from $5 to $10 to $25, $50,000. And this is going to happen by local investors. So I encourage you to visit that and check out the details on that. So my background, I was born in Odessa, Ukraine. My parents brought me here, thank you very much to them, when I was 8 years old in 1990. By 1993, because my father was a draftsman, we had one of the first 486s in Silicon Valley, computers, for those of you who are a little younger. And what that allowed me to do is actually become a little computer geek at a very young age, run BBSs before World Wide Web, and by happenstance become best friends with Stepan Pachikov's son, Alex Pachikov. Stepan Pachikov, very famous Russian entrepreneur, who founded a company called Paragraph, and we got to hang out at the Paragraph office, do a lot of shows, and really get into the startup game back in 1993 as interns and get a taste of it. Paragraph was best known for the terrible handwriting recognition on the Apple Newton, but we got to demo it at Computer World and all sorts of shows. So by '96, at a great age of 15, I was a budding designer, and I was the youngest employee of Kinko's in the history of the company. And then that really kind of got the bug started as far as both design and entrepreneurship, through some raves in high school, things like that. And by 1999, just as I graduated high school and went into college to please my mom, I was already running a front-end development team at an enterprise software.com. It of course bombed, and I went back to the printing industry and the design industry, did some things there, including started a design firm that grew very quickly, and that ultimately led to Keen, which is a product company that serves largely the graphic arts and printing industry, which is approaching $700 billion worldwide, but it's very much out of date and old school. As we raise more money, we are backed by 500 startups to a large degree, and IDG Excel, to show you just how international we are. IDG Excel was basically the Excel of China fund, and Asia is exploding with the print industry, so that was their interest. When we raised our Series A, we actually opened an engineering office in Kiev, and that's actually where most of our team is today. And that was right after the conference that we put on. And the actual opening day of our office in Kiev was February 17th, 2014. Very exciting time in Kiev, which was right before the shit really hit the fan. Pardon my French. And then this year, we're really pushing forward with CCC as the organization to provide thought leadership and entrepreneurship education in the region, largely, and then ultimately a venture fund that will back these companies and create that bridge to Silicon Valley. So I wanted to give you some statistics to kind of give you a little context on where venture capital industry is today, Ukraine, Russia, etc. So you can see, and all of these are sourced, and I'll post my slides. You're happy for you to kind of check these things out. But you can see, and these are very, very positive numbers about Ukraine, including buyouts and private equity and all sorts of things. But 2012, venture industry was about 57 million. It doubled in 2013, and by estimates currently, by the end of 2014, it kind of fell back down to about 50 million level. By my estimate, I can tell you, well, the actual venture capital part of it is 22 million, according to some research. But for companies that are actually really Ukrainian, that are founded there and have primary operations there, my estimate is under $5 million that actually went into those companies. So the numbers are very, very small. To give you some context, if we add Russia to the mix, 2012 was a peak year, 730 plus million. 2013, there was a big slowdown. A lot of these funds became much more mature, moved on to Fund 2, where they were much more sophisticated in picking where they're going to put in money. And by estimates so far, about 20% fall this year, but I think by the time the numbers are all summed up, that number is going to be much, much lower. That we'll see the 2014. Just from what I'm hearing about brain drain, fund leaving the country or not be willing to invest in companies in Russia, and all the best companies getting out into the Baltics and to other countries. If you compare it to Europe as a whole, Western Europe and European Union and UK, you can see that the numbers are the bars are getting a little bit different as far as context. And Europe, with a lot of activity, there's been a lot of PR, but it actually was kind of a lower year as well in Europe for other reasons, macroeconomic reasons in Europe. And then if we look at US, we can see that US, I think this is either a record or close to 2000 peak of 44 billion that was done in last year. And this doesn't count almost an equivalent of angel capital. Right? And more than half of this money is in California, right? So obviously we're in the epicenter of it. So journalists love this whole next Silicon Valley thing, but Ukraine has very specific things going for it. I can't, I do much more business in Ukraine. I was in Ukraine 9 times last year. Probably about, I'll spend just as much time there this year with my team. But I can tell you what's really driving for me, besides being born in Ukraine and identifying with the country. I'm really 1.5 generation. I'm 3/4 American. I grew up here. But Ukraine has a lot of things going for it. It's the #1 European outsourcing and IT talent pool. $2 billion US, as Anna said. 50,000 plus employees working in outsource as engineers, growing 20 to 30% per year, despite even everything in the last year. 100 plus international R&D centers, employing over 5,000 engineers, a lot of PhDs, growing 30 to 40% a year. All right, so it's kind of a dirty little secret that every single major company in Western Europe has an R&D center in Ukraine. Right, so including Trinity Mirror, biggest publisher in UK, including Samsung, Cisco just dumped $1 billion into Ukraine. So a lot of things going on there. Top 10 worldwide in certified IT specialists, despite population being under 45 million. $2 billion US e-commerce market and growing 40 to 50% a year. This is domestic. So e-commerce is maturing. So if you're looking for opportunities to work in Ukraine, that's a great area. And the spending parity GDP is about 337 billion in 2013, projected to grow by 30% to 2018. No doubt fell in 2014. Real GDP is 178 billion. So 2 billion of that is outsourcing, right? So that's a pretty major category, and it's probably one of the fastest growing categories in Ukraine. So when you look at this whole thing that bloggers like to write on TechCrunch about the next Silicon Valley, you're not going to find it here, right? But can it be the capital of Slavic startups? I think that's a great goal. By 2020 for Kiev to be the capital of Slavic startups. Why is it interesting? What Max highlighted on is that the companies locally are going to be solving those problems, those local problems. You're not going to see Silicon Valley companies drop everything and go to Eastern Europe and learn how to do business there and attack those markets. But Russian-speaking internet, RUNET, is second only to English in Europe, beat German in 2012, and is one of the fastest or the fastest growing, despite everything. So it's a great opportunity. As you saw, e-commerce is growing very fast. That economy is going to need everything. And if everything goes well, a great example is actually Poland as a case study, because 20 years ago, Poland economy and Ukraine economy were the same as far as GDP, as far as what it looked like societally. And now Polish economy is the fastest growing in Europe. So with the right opportunities, with the right fuel, Ukraine has even more raw material and can actually, in 5 years, look a lot more like Poland and a lot less like Russia and the kind of corrupt mafia government. Startup Weekend put together a great white paper on what it takes to build ecosystems, and essentially takes talent, right? And there's plenty of technical talent that in Ukraine, and I think you've all been told that. You need density and a certain culture, right? So you need all of this talent, creative, business, etc., to be in the same area. What's missing is actually sales and marketing talent, experience, and just simply professional business acumen. That's very much missing, right? Because there's just not much of it. People do business as they can. There's a lot of bribes. For somebody to get a master's degree, they have to, basically the business model is you pay for your master's degree. The college education since the Soviet times has suffered tremendously. There are some great universities, but I can tell you from recruiting top engineers in the country for Keen, their knowledge is very much lacking. They might have an impressive PhD in math or computer science, and when we test them on basics, and we have kind of a crazy CTO, they don't know the basics, right? So that's a very big problem. The culture component is that it means they need to encourage entrepreneurship. That failure is okay in a sense that it's okay to take risks, right? So if you look at Japan, Korea, it is not okay to take risks. If you fail, you are a loser, you're branded for life. There's also laws against personal bankruptcy, protection, etc. So it's insanely risky to start a company that has a high potential of failure, right? And any company that has a potentially high outcome will have a very high potential for failure. So culturally, this needs to be enforced, that it's okay and it's great to be an entrepreneur, not just go to school, become a doctor, lawyer, etc. Capital needs to be there. It's coming slowly. There's interest. There's a new venture capital association in Ukraine that's made up of local players as well as people that are kind of bridging to other economies and ecosystems. And certainly regulations have to support entrepreneurship and try to look at the case study of what the US government did with, in partnership with Stanford in the 50s, created a 2-to-1 matching, etc., to actually encourage investment into riskier capital classes like venture capital. So with that, I always post my slides on SlideShare, and actually, in the last decade, I've been mentor with a number of accelerators and traveled the world and spoke to hundreds of founders and kind of trying to put all of that knowledge and all these frequently asked questions into a book that should be coming out with a major publisher by the end of the year. So, thank you.
Okay, let's open it up for Q&A. Don't be shy. Yes?
It seems like a lot of you, especially you having chosen not to go into Parliament right now, think that the businesses will be able to solve the problems, but how will you overcome the political barrier of trying not to associate politics with business and trying to solve the political problems that are currently suffocating the businesses in this country?
Well, Ukraine is an interesting country because IT was developed here kind of against the government, not because of the government influence, and that was a good thing for IT because the government in Ukraine was always corrupted, etc., etc. We have a hope that it's going to be cured, but right now it's still not in a very good situation. So there is not a lot of hopes from IT industry for the government, and the influence from the government back to IT is not really huge. And then there was a very good event. There are like 5 or 10 IT kind of visionary people right now are somewhere in the government, including parliament or president administration, etc. There was an event when we were talking to the industry guys, and one of the questions was like, okay, what do we want from government to do with IT? And the most common answer was like, nothing, just don't touch it. Let it grow naturally, that's it. So that's why I'm not really concerned about the political situation right now, if only it's not a war. Because if war will reach out those centers, and the centers of IT in Ukraine, it's kind of Kharkiv, Kiev, Lviv, and the war is going on eastern part in Donetsk region, and Crimea is annexed. We have some resources like IT developers flooding from Crimea and from that region, but until those big centers are not affected, IT is still in a good shape.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
So my question is probably to Vlad and to Vitaly, for the most part. So when we are talking specifically that there are 3 main centers that have that concentration of IT people, I saw how that was happening in Russia because I was part of it. I saw how American companies or European companies were investing money in specific regions because it was pretty well-talented people and with certain language skills at the same time. And then I saw what happened after that, which was basically salary wars, right? Sun Microsystems opened an office, Intel came, stole their people, then next one came, stole their people. So when we're talking about those small hubs, what do you see there in that regard? What is the current utilization of the talent that's there? How much of a room do we have in terms of building more centers there, right? And what is the next step? What is the next potential hub for IT?
That's a good question.
I can jump in on it. So it's already happening. Kiev is not a small center. It's a city of 3 million plus, and with surrounding region about 6.5 million. So almost the size of Bay Area, population-wise. There are a number of top universities that are in Kiev and Lvov, Odessa as well, my hometown, down south, but it's a smaller city of about 1 million. What's happening is that outsource has been building in the last half decade plus so fast and getting contracts so fast that these are the big 400-pound gorillas that are fighting for, they get a rec and say, okay, we need 100 developers. Of those, 50 need to be senior Java guys, etc. And what they'll do is they'll go raid each other's employees, and they say, okay, so you're a mid guy there, you make X amount per month, we'll give you $500 more, we're going to call you senior, and we're going to sell you to this company. And those companies, when they're kind of buying in bulk, they don't really get to vet these engineers as much. And like I said, the quality is not, it's not where it should be. Although they might have the educational credentials, technically they have a master's degree, a PhD, etc. But in a lot of cases, they're lacking practical skills. So it's been incredibly difficult for us. We have kind of a complex Scala stack, which is already very difficult to recruit for. It's been very difficult for us to find people. And we basically interview, 20, 30 people to find one person. But it's already happening, and these guys are making 4 or 5 times more than lawyers and doctors. Engineers that are, let's say 3 to 5 years plus more experienced are somewhat spoiled. And they get paid in dollars, and they pay, there's only a 5% employment tax on top. I think it just went down to 4.
6, no, it's actually 6.
It went up 6. They're doing fine, right? So their purchasing power has actually raised in the last year since the currency fell by 50%. So they're already a little bit spoiled, and it's actually what's most difficult and what's most relevant here is that it's difficult to get them to take a risk, step out of this comfort zone of having a well-paying job for the market, and go and not make any money and start a product company that's highly risky. Right, so that's what we're actually trying to do is get these guys that actually have engineering experience to build products. They built things before. Instead of just coming out of school and having no experience and not risking anything, they come out and they can actually build something, but get them to risk it and actually build a product versus just get stuck and outsource forever and work 9 to 5.
I can only confirm that right now, because of such a huge outsourcing market in Ukraine, we use this as a reason to kind of headhunt people, even to the same salary level. Just, okay, now you have a voice, since you work for the product company, so your voice can be heard, you can introduce your ideas, and people actually, smart people bite on it. So, I mean, that happens, but I totally agree with you, price wars is literally on the way, and those 3 centers are high above all of the other regions, and people may only opt in to do not go to those centers because cost of their living in the places where they are, but salary and to find an IT job is kind of hard. They may work remote, many of those do, and it's easy these days, but still though, these are 3 main hubs, and not because of big cities, but because of the good universities and a number of those high schools there.
And is there anything that, I believe that the government probably is not doing anything just because it's so new and has so many other issues, but is there anything that your accelerators, that the community does in terms to address the gap between education and the needs of the market?
Not only government is trying to do that, there is a fund called Brain Basket, which actually the main aim is to close that gap, which Vitaly was talking about, that the education is still Soviet system, and those very educated guys, they don't know basics, which are needed in modern IT. So even non-governmental funds are trying to close that gap. And within government, based on what I know, which brewing inside, is that the idea of those technoparks or hubs are especially not for big cities, but somewhere else, where you will have better terms of taxation, maybe even different law applied. If we could make that, that would be huge. So then those technoparks supposedly should kind of improve the areas which are not right now strong in IT.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
In Russia, you most recently were seeing the 3 laws around the extremist law, the blogger law, and with the data localization law, and with the move for that pushing into 2015. What do you see as the entrepreneurs doing in Russia in order to be advocating against such restrictions to businesses and the freedom of expression in Russia itself? And also, how do you see that can be prevented in Ukraine so that these startups can flourish and there won't be any restrictions to how their companies can grow in the future?
Well, I can take. So reality is, I will cover the Russian part. Reality is entrepreneurs really cannot do much. That's exactly the part of completely broken government's block in Russia, because this law, it's not like there was some sort of expert committee that carefully deliberated and thought about consequences and decided, oh, this would be like correct, wise policy. Basically, Russian Duma is pretty strange place, and lots of these laws suggested basically just for political points, just to advance lawmakers' agenda in kind of within Putin's circle. And sometimes they don't even intend these laws to actually become laws. They know they are completely idiotic, but this is good political game to introduce them. So yeah, fundamental kind of Russian entrepreneurs live in the country. So Pavel Durov, who is founder of Kontakti, he had to leave country. And realistically, situation when you like expecting knock on the door in the middle of the night from law enforcement in Russia, you are not in position to say, hey, this is bad laws, let's fight against them. So yeah, it's until the whole system changes, they're not going to be. Basically, Russian lawmaking body, it's on its own trajectory, on its own like crazy trip. They are like fulfilling their own agenda that has nothing to do with representing Russian population. And fundamentally, it's going to change only with the whole system.
Sorry, can I just add? Because I guess in 2010, with Medvedev's visit, to Silicon Valley and to the United States as a technocratic leader, there was definitely a lot of hope and like a aspiration for bringing that ecosystem back to Russia. I mean, we lived in Moscow when Sun Microsystems was open in '95. So there was so much hope and momentum moving forward. But now, how is it not that people are?
There was very sharp change, and again, it's a little bit speculative information, though don't take me as holy gospel on this. Fundamentally, Putin really wanted Medvedev to be independent president, and he really was delegating kind of authority to him. But what absolutely scared him is situation in Libya and some of other Medvedev kind of actions. So he basically made the decision like, okay, he's not ready, I'm taking the power back. And that was binary change. So everything that Medvedev was worked on, it's basically become secondary priority, and it's absolutely not a priority for Putin. I wouldn't say that he specifically tried to shut it down. I think Skolkovo kind of exists in this kind of diminishing state, slowly decaying to zero. But basically, it was absolutely not a priority for Putin administration. And when administration changed, that's it. All that part basically consider it flushed down the toilet. It's kind of it got no future, no support. And people who now kind of making this laws, people in Duma, they're not thinking how to please Medvedev and his whole agenda. They're thinking how to earn points into this kind of new Russian system, which yet again, it's kind of wrapped words. They're not living in real reality today.
Let me just add that I don't want to speculate who decided what and when, right? And there are very different opinions on that. But yeah, I mean, basically every day we find out that someone is moving to the valley, some entrepreneur is coming here. There is no way to influence in any way on what's happening in Duma. So these are kind of two separate worlds. But in a way, it's actually good that this world works just writing laws, and there's the other world that's kind of still building businesses. So there are entrepreneurs, and lots of them, they realize that things are not going well, and they move to the U.S., mostly to the Valley. Kind of in the same way when I saw several years ago in Medvedev times, and even before that, when Russian-speaking people were moving back to Russia and to Ukraine to start building companies there. Our portfolio company, a couple of guys who graduated from Stanford, moved back to Russia to build a company there, very successful company. So it coming and going, right? It happens all the time. The good thing, I think, is that those who stay, they used to go work for the government, for oil companies, for banks. And so what we have now is, banks are on the verge of collapsing. Government bribes will not help anymore. Ruble is so, 50% down, even more. And there is just unstable times, and in unstable times, it's easier to start making risky decisions, and start companies. And actually, the best decisions and the best companies, as we know, were built during crisis, right, or downturn in the economy. So yes, no influence. People leave, but those who stay, there is a hope that they will start businesses. And in fact, I just want to reiterate once again that politics is kind of one thing, and what's happening in the country, it's a little bit different. If you learn how to navigate, then you may become pretty successful.
We have time for 2 more questions. Nick, in the back.
Hi guys, Nick Golomb from Ukraine. My question is for those of you who are from Ukraine, invest in Ukraine, or work in a Ukrainian startup. So for the Ukrainian startup ecosystem to grow faster, or for the Ukrainian venture capital community to prosper, what reforms are necessary from the government? For you personally, what are the biggest issues and problems causing the most grief? Should these reforms be in the areas of regulation, or taxation, or general corruption? How likely is the current government of Poroshenko yet to address them? Thank you.
Well, yeah, these are the regulations. So, first of all, to keep that taxation, which we were talking about, like 6% income tax, it really helps, seriously. And then synchronize the regulations within Ukraine with the regulations in the other world. So, like, property rights. Even we don't even have a very good law for e-commerce, which is booming. Like we were talking here. The law is not yet settled. So, small, simple steps. And my personal focus is do not let government really regulate it, but fix those gaps which exist right now between regulations in Ukraine versus regulations in all other good and right countries. And that's primary focus. So nothing else is literally planned, because it's not in a bad shape. It's not in a bad situation. There is nothing to really worry about. Just let that water that, and it will grow.
It's actually, from my viewpoint, there's an opportunity right now to create kind of an analog to Delaware incorporation law. That would be kind of a stretch goal right now for Ukraine. But to kind of get into that mode where there's potential for Ukraine to, again, become a capital of Slavic startups and create that magnet, it's going to take a lot of effort to create these laws, but also around taxation. So you have retirement funds and things like that that will be encouraged in investing in innovation and what's seen as risky capital classes, which was done in the US. Venture industry literally grew tenfold in 2 years in the US in the 70s because of regulations and certain encouragement from the government to invest in the asset class. In the Maslow hierarchy of needs in Ukraine, that's very low right now. It's going to take 10, 20 years for these things to really happen if they get started now, just to be realistic. But if you look at Russia and kind of tying it back to the last question, Russia's screwed for the next 20, 30 years. It's not going to be a short-term problem, because Putin's going to be in power for another 8+ years.
Well, let's hope not.
Unless, I won't comment publicly how that could be fixed. But it's going to take a decade more to fix that, right? So there's going to be a big brain drain that continues. And in the 90s, Russia had a huge brain drain problem. In the early 2000s, somewhat reversed it by mid-2000s. There were a lot of smart people with American educations that understood the culture, that were encouraged to move there, that did quite well for themselves, all up until the 2008 crash. Where brain drain kind of got switched on again. It got calmed down for the last couple of years to maybe 30, 40,000 per year. And from what I heard in 2014, it's back up to about 200,000 levels. And people that I know that actually came back from Russia, from working there for a good decade with Silicon Valley educations and experience, that it's way worse in 2012. And that's going to take another decade plus to reverse. So the most important thing is brains and experience, and that's leaving Russia in droves. The important thing is to try to get some of those brains to come to Ukraine and put their resources and efforts into that economy and build from there.
One last question. Yes.
Hi, I'm Robert Kowalski from Poland. I wanted to ask you, what's the sort of dynamic of cooperation between entrepreneurs in Ukraine and Russia and the diaspora, I would say, in the US or Israel? Is there much, I don't know, investing going on between the people who are here or in Israel?
Not
back
enough.
in Ukraine, Russia, or
there are several
There is much going on. There are joint ventures. There are entrepreneurs coming back and forth. There are programs. There are conferences. But yes, I'd say not enough. And then, you know, we here in the Silicon Valley, we're trying to get the best brains move to the valley. That's true. And so they're all here.
I mean, what you'll find is that the best and brightest do, unfortunately, I mean, just speaking for Ukraine at the moment, are still kind of trying to get out because they see global opportunities and building global companies. They'll try to do it out of London, Berlin, or Silicon Valley if they can. So for them to stick around to stick around in Ukraine, let's say, and build global companies out of there, it's going to take a lot more of that ecosystem maturation. As far as the diaspora, unfortunately, there's a number of very successful Ukrainian entrepreneurs: Max Levchin, PayPal, Jan Koum, WhatsApp, and knowing one better than the other, I can tell you that both of them are not really interested in spending their time and resources helping their country. They're kind of turned away from it, both of them actually. I think Max's attitude is actually much more common, which is I'm American now, and I'm a very kind of negative attitude on what's going on there. There's not enough people that are willing to kind of invest themselves because it's not really a money-making opportunity. It's actually it's more of a donation of time and efforts and resources and opportunity cost to actually do that. But I think with time there will be more people that feel that. And with what's incredible is in the last year, Ukraine has really built its own identity very, very well. Kind of incredible to watch because before you're not going to see, you drive down the street in any town in the USA, you see a bunch of American flags. That didn't really exist in Ukraine up until a year ago. Now you walk around Kiev and like every building has a Ukrainian flag, gates are painted into the colors, so people really built that identity. Whereas before there was really this fracture between, well, we're speaking Russian, are we really Ukrainian? Kind of all of that was mixed up. So all of those things are pointing to a positive future, but without strife, there's no progress. It's just going to take time.
So I regret very much we need to wrap this up. I'd like to thank each of our speakers for participating, especially those of you who've come all the way from Ukraine. Can we please give them a hand for a great small thank you gifts. For students who are interested in attending the post-session dinner, please come and see me for directions. Also, don't forget to sign the online sign-in form, and we'll see you next week for oil and startups in oil economies, Norway and Scotland. Thank you very much.